Good evening, everyone. So it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to Spark 2023, a series of online workshops designed to good evening, everyone. 1 minute. I hope everyone can hear me now. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to Spark 2023, a virtual workshop series organized by the ACELU to ignite your passions and help you reach your full potential. Today, we are honored to have Mr. Sajeev Rajaputhra as our guest speaker for the second workshop on entrepreneurship. Mr. Sajeev is a successful individual and an inspiring leader who was born in Sri Lanka and moved to Japan at a very young age. And at a very young age, he started his journey, and today he's the CEO of SAS3, a trading company, the chairman of Rajaputhra group of companies, and the owner of many other multiple businesses across various countries. Although he's an entrepreneur by profession, Mr. Sajeev is also an actor, a director, a singer, and a martial artist as a multi-talented individual. His fluency in English, Sinhalese, and Japanese, his creative thinking and his strategic mind, along with his ability to multitask, have undoubtedly enhanced his personality. So let's get ready to learn, grow, and be inspired by Mr. Sajeev's expertise.
Do you measure success? We live in a world where there are a lot of measures of success. For somebody, it might be how educated they are. Somebody else might say, look, hey, I have a great family life, and that's what success is to me. You might have a third person say, you know what, I'm rich. That is success. We all have different definitions of it. But the truth is, we can't measure success with the same metrics. If you take a monkey and a fish, and you decide that success is based on who climbs a tree faster, guess what? Monkey's gonna win. But if you change that and decide that success is measured by who swims better, then the fish is gonna win. Everything differs based on your measurement. So you cannot measure success with the same metrics. But what should be at the end? What should be on the other side of what we call success? The one thing that success has for every single one of us is that it should lead us all to happiness. If you make happiness the metric of success, no one can fail. Decide today what happiness is to you. And it might not be just one thing. It might be an array of things. A little bit of wealth with more of family time and some education. That's okay, as long as you're happy. Decide what happiness is to you, and as long as you follow that, it'll lead you to success.
Sajeev sir, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, so we are very honored to have you on board with us, sir. for this workshop.
Thank
And
you.
the stage is for you, sir. All yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. First of all, thank you, Jayandi, for the very kind introduction and the beautiful video. That was very nice. You know, I actually did that a while back. I kind of I do a lot of videos, so I've kind of forgotten a little bit about that one. So it was really nice and refreshing to get a taste, almost kind of like it was the first time. So that was great. Thank you. First of all, I want to take a second to say thank you to Ananda College and to everybody who was behind organizing this series. This was, from what I've heard, this is a wonderful, wonderful series, and I'm honored to be brought on as a guest speaker today. I wish the best of luck for all the future ones, but let's make the best out of this time. So thank you again to everybody involved. I'm not gonna mention names one by one, but Senithu, Jaindu, all the people who came and got in touch with me, the principal, everybody, thank you so much. So to start off, I think I'll give a brief introduction about myself for those who may not know much about my background. So my name is Sajeev Rajaputhra. I was born in a small town in Kurnagala called Mawadakam. And my parents moved to Japan when I was about 7, 8 years old. So I grew up mostly here in Tokyo, where I am at the moment. And once we moved here, my father started a vehicle export business, which started very small. And I got to be part of the initial roots of that business. I got to witness firsthand how he built it from scratch, and even be involved in parts of that process. And over a very short period of time, he became one of the top exporters. He was very successful in his business. Management style was a little different from probably what I'm doing today, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But he was very successful, did a great job, and then retired a few years ago. I myself continued my higher studies, went on to do 4 degrees. I took over the company quite a few years back. I was already doing my own company, separate from what my father was doing, because I wanted to deal with international markets. He was mainly focused on Sri Lanka. And once I had fully taken over, we merged the companies, and we are now in 26 markets in the vehicle industry. And I'm also in 5, I believe, industries, different industries at the moment, with media and productions, restaurant, hospitality, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just a very, very brief background. And I think one of the most important parts of that background, which I must add, is that while I am the chairman of the Rajaputhra Group of Companies and the CEO of Sastry Trading, probably more importantly, I am father to 5 children, who I'm very lucky to have. And my wife and my children are such a massive strength behind everything I do. So that's something, I know it's not traditionally a subject when it comes to entrepreneurship, but I think is something that that is worth touching upon as we go through the evening. So let me get started. Now, in preparing for this evening and this webinar, I discussed with the young gentleman who visited and called multiple times over the last few weeks, organizing all of this. And we're discussing about when touching on the subject of entrepreneurship, what exactly to talk about, because entrepreneurship is a very, very broad topic. There is so much that can be said. And I think in order to really talk about something of substance would require a workshop that lasted 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, at least, to really get to the nitty-gritty stuff. So being such a broad topic, I was wondering about how to express my experiences and knowledge and what entrepreneurship really is about with you. And so I thought to start with the basics. And the basics are always easy when you start with 6 very simple questions. And those are who, what, when, where, why, the 5 W's, and how. So to start off, I think we should begin by defining what entrepreneurship really is. One of the things I've noticed over the years is there's been a surge in those who describe themselves as entrepreneurs. It's kind of become a cool tagline. Instead of saying, "Oh, I'm a businessman, I'm an entrepreneur." That's almost synonymous with what people think a businessman is, but there's a big difference between these two. And one of the main differences is that every entrepreneur is a businessman, but not every businessman is an entrepreneur. That's because there's a big difference in what's behind both of these things. Let me unblur myself here. And if I'm to explain that to you a little further, let me start off with this. Okay. Sorry. Let me start off with this. A businessman is someone who takes a business and carries it forward. Someone who can turn 1 into 2. An entrepreneur, on the other hand, is someone who can turn 0 into 1. And that is a big, big difference. And I think it's important that we establish that difference before going any further, because that makes all of the difference. So as an entrepreneur, one of the things you have to figure out is, how can I bring something new? And that's not necessarily a new product. It's not necessarily a new service. It might even be a new way of doing the same thing, a change in the process, but something that is new, that makes what you do unique, that makes what you do different, that is an advantage over what anybody else is doing. So being able to bring something new is really what makes you an entrepreneur. So I wanted to start off with that premise, because I think it's really important that we establish that. So an entrepreneur is somebody who turns 0 into 1. Now, with that definition, I think one of the key things that, as young, hopeful entrepreneurs of the future, because it's a massive responsibility. One of the backbones, or the key backbone, if I may, of any economy, of any country, is its small to medium businesses. And we need more entrepreneurs in our country. That is, it's no secret. Lately, I've been very concerned just watching the trend of what's happening in Sri Lanka today. There's a lot of difficulties, needless to say, a lot of challenges that are being faced. And I'm seeing that anybody who's capable takes the option of leaving the country. If they have the option of leaving the country, that is what they try to do, because going somewhere else gives you better opportunities. It gives you more stability. it's faster, it's easier to do things, and there's a better future. And it's true. Unfortunate, but true. One of the biggest concerns I have, especially as a father, someone who's getting a little bit older, although not that old yet, is that, you know, we're not always going to be in this position. Hopefully, with good leadership and the right strategies and the right execution, we'll be able to do something, because we have a great country. We have a great location, a great country. We have so much potential. It's just completely untapped and been very badly mismanaged. But we have an amazing, amazing country. And when we do finally start getting on the right track, you know, I fear that we're not going to have enough of our own in our country to lead that change. So I'm hoping that most of you, at least, will have the opportunity and the ability to do something in Sri Lanka, if possible, that supports our economy and our country, which is something that I'm trying to do as well, even though I'm based mainly in Japan. Over the last few months, I've been investing in multiple different projects in Sri Lanka, because I feel this is part of my responsibility anyway at this point, as something that I can do. So as young entrepreneurs who are moving forward, even if for some reason you don't end up in Sri Lanka, I do hope that someday, when it comes to your time and you've become successful in whatever thing you're doing, wherever you may be, that you never forget to come back, that you never forget to look back and do what you can. All right. Okay. So first question, after describing what this concept of entrepreneurship is why would you want to be an entrepreneur? Now, that might seem like an obvious question, but that is a question that needs some serious thinking, because entrepreneurship is not easy by any means. It's not, you know, nowadays you have a lot of social media, you got Instagram and all these things that make anything look very glamorous. And yes, being a successful entrepreneur has its glamour, but mind you, the operative word is successful. And getting to being successful is a very, very long journey. So it's difficult. It takes a lot of commitment. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifices, and it's something you really have to get into with everything you got. So the question is, why? There are a lot of reasons that people come up with, and one of the main things is for money. That's fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Money is important. You know, I really dislike, I'll be very honest about this, I really dislike when people say things like, well, money is not that important. I mean, as long as you have a little bit to manage, it's okay. You know, you shouldn't go after money. It's not important. Because it's not true. It's not true, because money is like oxygen. It's not that important until you don't have any. That's the thing about money. See, if you didn't have oxygen for 3 seconds, you'd realize how important that is. You're not going to think about anything else other than catching your breath. You're not going to think about the game. You're not going to be thinking about cricket. You're not going to be thinking about your husband, wife, nothing. If you didn't have oxygen for 3 seconds, what are you going to think about? Only about taking a breath. Money is something like that. If you don't have any, that's all you can really think about, because it's part of our structure. It's part of what makes all of this work. And without it, you can't survive. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to be wealthy, wanting to have a good life, because I think we need to start with redefining what money is. You know, we have a certain culture in our country that sometimes tends to frown upon or look negatively towards things like money. But I think if you redefine money and what that really is, it makes all the difference. The way I see it is that money is freedom. It gives you the freedom to live the lifestyle that you want. It gives you the freedom to take care of your family. It gives you the freedom to go wherever you want, to do whatever you want. It gives you the freedom to help other people. How would you help somebody else if you couldn't help yourself? So all of that is only possible if you make something of yourself. And the pursuit of that, I think, is a noble one, as long as it is done correctly, because there's lots of ways to make money. But what's important is that you do it in the right way, that you do it with integrity, that you do it in a legal way, that you do it in a moral way. And that's really important. So the pursuit of that, I think, is a good thing. And if everybody had a little more of that, I don't think we'd be in this situation to begin with. So there's nothing wrong with going after freedom. How many wars are fought over freedom? How many battles are fought over freedom? How many lives are sacrificed for freedom? So if financial freedom is something wrong, there's a big problem with that train of thought. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at, because our beliefs, what we really believe, defines what we do. And I've noticed a lot of times that there's still that tendency to look at money and things like that as a negative thing, which is absolutely not, as long as it's done right. Okay, so why go into entrepreneurship? If money is one of the reasons, fair enough. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, money in itself is not going to satisfy at the end. Those who don't have it think that once you have it, it'll solve all problems. It doesn't. In fact, it actually multiplies your problems. But if you know how to handle those well, then you'll know how to turn that into a tool that brings you that happiness that we talked about in that video in the very beginning. Because at the end of the day, if you're not happy, it doesn't matter. I know people who did jobs, who then went on to become entrepreneurs and started their businesses. They were very successful, but they were miserable because now they didn't get to spend that time with their family. They didn't get to have the freedom that they thought they were going to have with the time that they have. You figure if you're your own boss, you can do whatever you want. You can't. You don't get to just do whatever you want if you're the boss. In fact, if you're the boss, you're actually working for everybody else, because now you got entire teams of people dependent on you. You got to show up. You got to be on your A game. If you're the captain of the ship, everybody's depending on you. That's your responsibility. You can't slack off. If you were just one of the crew and you didn't do your job exactly perfectly, somebody else is probably going to cover for you. You can't do that as the boss. So I know people who've gone from doing good jobs to starting companies and becoming entrepreneurs, and then becoming very miserable and very unhappy with their lives because they didn't get what they thought it was going to bring them. So before going into entrepreneurship, before going into starting a business, I think it's really important to evaluate whether that's the right path for you, whether that's going to bring you what you're expecting, whether that's in line with what this is. So a lot of times that happens because what you believe, what you expect is not what's actually there. So what I want to do is take a little time today to give you a little feel of some of the things that are there that you don't necessarily get to see from the outside. And some of those are challenges, but at the same time, for those who really enjoy the process and enjoy the journey, I think those are wonderful challenges. And it's a great way to go through life. So going back to the question of why, again, freedom. And there's nothing that gives you that kind of freedom. As Jayendra mentioned earlier in his introduction, I do a lot of things. I do movies, I direct, I act, I sing, I have a lot of interests, and I'm quite passionate about all of those things. So one of the biggest challenges I had was deciding which path to take, because I had so many paths I could have taken. I've had so many things I could have done, that I was very confused. My sister, I have two younger sisters, the elder one of the younger sisters, from age 5, she knew she was going to be a doctor. That was it. She was set on that, and that's what she did. And she's a very, very successful doctor living in the States now. And it was a really easy decision for her. Whereas for me, having all these different interests, all these things I wanted to do, that was very difficult to decide where I'm going to commit myself to. But I committed myself to entrepreneurship because that now gave me the freedom to do all those other things. If I had just chosen one path here, that's probably all I would have been able to do in my life. So that freedom, financial freedom, all these freedoms are hidden inside this thing called entrepreneurship. And if you do it right, you can have all of that. But getting there is a difficult and challenging journey. But as long as you understand what those challenges are, it's one of the most fulfilling journeys you'll ever get to take. So with that, let me move on to the third part of our question. We started with what entrepreneurship is, why you should even think of going into entrepreneurship. Oh, and by the way, let me also add, why not to go into entrepreneurship? If you think for a second it's because it's cool, or it's the fame and the prestige, or that's just what's expected of you and you have to do it, those are really not the right reasons to go into it. That may be the result if you do it right, but that's not the reason you should be doing it. And we'll get to a little more of that later on, okay? So we talked about what, we talked about why. Now let's talk a little bit about who should be an entrepreneur. And I think this is probably the most, shall I say, the heaviest question of all here, because entrepreneurship is not about something you just do. In fact, it's more to do with who you actually are. Just like being an artist, just like being a singer, just like being an actor, just like any of those things. An entrepreneur is someone who is an entrepreneur. That's not something that starts at a specific time. It's who you are, who you've always been. But the key thing about entrepreneurship is you have to have multiple, shall I say, interests. And what I mean by that is, if you don't like numbers, we got a problem, because without accounts, without numbers, you can never, ever run a business. I know plenty of people who love the business part of it. They just hate dealing with numbers. You have to be interested in numbers. If you don't like working with people, it's never going to work, because a huge part of entrepreneurship is building teams and working with people and getting them on board, and communication and sharing a vision and getting them to share that vision with you. That part of it is, I think, one of the really, really core parts of being a good entrepreneur. Understanding economics, how that works, the part that you and your organization plays in the macro things of economics, and being able to make sacrifices today for something much bigger tomorrow. These are all really, really important things. So you got to be able to blend all those things together as an entrepreneur. It cannot be just one thing, because I'll tell you, as a CEO, this is one of those titles, and this is something I discussed with a friend who said to me, I really hate the title CEO. And I said, why is that? He said, everything else that you do in a company, if you have a board, you have the CFO, who's the chief financial officer, right? You could have the COO, the chief operations officer. Every one of these C-suite titles, when you hear the title, you know what they do. The job is in the title, right? So CFO, chief financial officer, he's in charge of the finance. You know that for all of the C whatever titles. When it comes to CEO, chief executive officer, what does that mean? It doesn't give you a description of the job, right? And he said that this was his idea, that he thought it should be called CVO. And I said, what does that stand for? And he said, I think it should stand for Chief Vision Officer, because the main job of a CEO is to create the vision and be able to communicate that and get people together. And then you kind of have to overlook everything, because in the very beginning, you're the one involved in all those things. So when it comes to the question of who is suitable for entrepreneurship, you have to identify what traits you have that are in line with being a good entrepreneur. So I could go hours talking about what those traits are, because there are so many. It's not just one specific thing. You need a blend of all these things. But let me just touch on some of the most critical ones. One of the most important traits, and this is just non-negotiable, if you're going to be a good entrepreneur, is you need to have good leadership abilities. Leadership, and I think you guys had a webinar on leadership, I think, prior to this one. Unfortunately, it's not something I was able to join, but leadership is so important, because without good leadership, we end up in situations like we have with our country. 75 years later, here we are, right? That is just poor leadership on so many levels, so many times, on so many realms. So having good leadership skills is very important. But with good leadership skills, especially as new entrepreneurs, you need to understand two things. Number one, when you're starting off, it's you. You're the guy, you're doing everything, you're in charge of everything. Nothing gets past you. You do it all, because that's how things start. Okay. Usually when you get started brand new, you have to do everything. It's just the way it is. And that is one form of leadership, being accountable for everything, just you doing everything by yourself, rolling up your sleeves, no matter what it is. Nothing is too small of a job. Everything from, if it's my industry, everything from washing the cars that you're selling, all the way up to, doing your tax files, to everything. You are involved in all of it. Okay. So as a good leader, you need to be someone who is capable of putting your ego aside, putting your pride aside, putting all of that, because none of that matters. None of that's going to pay you. None of that's going to help you. None of that's going to build up your company. Doesn't matter. That's one of the things that a lot of people learn the hard way, because putting their ego and pride and all that stuff first, well, that's just below my level. I don't want to do that. Well, then you're not going to get anywhere. Okay. Because everybody who's somebody started somewhere, and that place was doing whatever it took. So when you're starting off, you have to be prepared to do absolutely anything and everything. There's nothing that you should not be involved in. All right. That's the first part. Now here's the second part of it. If you are a good leader, your biggest job your biggest job is to eventually make yourself not needed anymore. All right. So take parents. Now, I said I have 5 kids. They need me for so many things. My youngest one is less than a year old. She couldn't do anything by herself. She needs me. She needs her mother. At this point, this is that part of the business, right, where you are involved in everything. My wife and I have to be involved in everything related to her, from feeding her to changing her to washing her, burping her, putting her down to sleep and waking her up and carrying her around. Everything about her has to go through us. That's that early part of entrepreneurship I told you about, right? Later on in life, as they grow, as they get educated, as they get exposed to the world. Now, my eldest one is 17. Okay. So there's a lot of things now that he's doing independently. He doesn't need me for. He doesn't need my wife for. There's still other things he needs us for, right? But eventually, my job is to make sure that he gets to a position where he's independent enough that he doesn't need me anymore. He doesn't need his mother anymore. He wants us. That's a different story. Okay. He'll want us in his life. He'll want us to be around. He'll want us all the time, but he doesn't need us. Okay. That is the job of every parent, because the sad truth is we will all lose our parents at some point in our lives. Our parents have lost their parents, and they've lost their parents. I will eventually lose. I'm lucky enough that my parents are still around, but that's a reality I have to face at some point. And my children have to face losing me at some point. That's life. And life is this beautiful mechanism where you bring in all this fresh stuff, you change things around, and then that gets old and it gets gone, and the new stuff, new fresh start comes again. So it's a beautiful mechanism that happens. So even in a company, your job is to make sure that it will be there when you're gone, that you're not going to have to always be around. So the second part of good leadership is making sure that eventually what you're building outlives you. And you can't wait until you're at the end of your life to do that. You have to start that process as early as you can. So in the beginning, it's all about getting hands-on and doing everything yourself. And then as time goes on, delegation, being able to hand things over to other people, putting systems in place, putting proper people who are accountable in place, having a system so that if some of these people are not here tomorrow, there are new people who can come in and take over because the system is organized in that structure. So those are all very, very important parts of this. And that kind of leadership skills are absolutely vital, starting, running, and then handing over a successful company. So as an entrepreneur, leadership, very, very, very important, non-negotiable, okay? Another thing I want to touch on as a very important trait of an entrepreneur is, if you're going to go into entrepreneurship, you want to be highly motivated, correct? You want a team of people who are highly motivated. And some of you might have seen some of my motivational videos. I do those to help those who are who are stuck, who are trying to pick up from being stuck in a situation. So I do it for that. However, I want to tell you that motivation is overrated. Yeah. My advice to you is, do not rely on motivation. The very concept of it is faulty. What is motivation? Think about that for a second. Motivation usually is, when you listen to a video, you look at this and you look at that and you feel like doing something. And that's a dangerous word, feel. Because motivation is it's all about here, right? It's all about feelings. And feelings, they come and go. They don't stick around. They change, right? They have ups and downs. And if you rely on motivation to do stuff, what happens on rainy days when you're not motivated? Who's going to do it? So if it's a matter of that, I say, don't rely on motivation. Rely on discipline. And that's a very different thing, because discipline has to do with this. Motivation's all here. Discipline is all here. Discipline is deciding with your mind, this is what needs to be done. This is what I have to do. And then doing it. That's it. You don't think about it. You don't wonder about it. You're not like, well, I don't know how to, none of that. You just do it. By the way, my favorite slogan of all time, Nike, just do it. That is the definition of discipline. Just do it. You know how many people I come across who are trying to figure out what they want to do in life or how they're going to do these things in life. 99% of them already know what they have to do. They just don't know how to make themselves want to do it. And that's the whole problem. It's not that they don't know what to do. They know what to do. They just don't, because they don't feel like they're not motivated. Not motivated. See, that's dangerous. Because if you're relying on wanting to do stuff before you do it, you're not going to get much done in life. So as an entrepreneur, you have to rely on discipline rather than motivation. And I'll give you a little trick on something that has really worked for me, that helps me when it comes to staying disciplined. Because, discipline is about consistency, right? Some of you might be going to the gym. Some of you might be working out. Imagine going to the gym for 10 hours today and then not going for the rest of the month, versus going 20 minutes every day for 30 days. I think it's very clear which one of these two is going to give you better results. 10 hours, one day, and never going again, or 20 minutes every day for 30 days. By the way, both of these are still 10 hours, yeah? 10 hours, 20 minutes a day for 30 days, that's still 10 hours. But you're going to get much better results, because here you have consistency. And that is what discipline is about. Discipline is about consistently doing the same thing over and over and over again. So one of the things that's helped me personally in my life, and believe me, I don't enjoy this, but it has really helped when it comes to staying disciplined, is building routines. If you build routines, for example, you wake up at the same time every day. The second you wake up, the first thing you do is go brush your teeth, wash your face. You go for a run. You come back and you get in the shower. You have breakfast. You get to work at a certain time. You do the. If you build a certain routine, you get into a habit of doing the same thing at the same time every single day. And what that does is it eliminates the need for you to think about it. So if you wake up at 5, you wake up at 5. It doesn't matter how you feel. You wake up at 5. If you go for a run in the morning, every morning, then you go for a run in the morning every morning. It doesn't matter whether it's raining. It doesn't matter if it's cold. It doesn't matter if you feel, you do that. So if you do that consistently every day and you build a routine out of doing that, you tend to stay much more disciplined than waking up and then deciding, what am I going to do with my day, right? So as an entrepreneur, you have so many decisions that you need to make, so many critical decisions that you need to make. These should not be part of that. You should not be wasting energy or time figuring out these mundane little things based on how you feel. those should be autopilot. So set up routines that get rid of the process of having to, the reason Steve Jobs wore the same turtleneck and the same denims and part of that was because he didn't have to waste time figuring out what he was going to dress that day. It was just easy. He wore the same thing. He had 10 of the same thing and just wore that every single day. Just he said it took a huge decision out of my life every morning that I was wasting so much time on. So I just wear the same, right? So you want to autopilot as many unnecessary things as possible, so you don't waste time and energy on that, and you get to focus on the really important stuff. So building discipline, one of the key things is building routines and creating those habits. And if you do that, I promise you the part about being disciplined will be a lot easier. Something else I wanted to touch on, which you may have, maybe if you've seen some of my old videos, may have heard of before, is a concept that after doing many studies, and this is so important for an entrepreneur, this is, again, one of those things, non-negotiable. If you don't have this, you're going to be in trouble as an entrepreneur, okay? Because it is so fundamental to what good entrepreneurship is. There was a study that was done to identify what elements gave the best chances of success. And they took young kids and they did a whole bunch of tests, and they realized that there was this one thing, talent, very important. Skills are very important. Education, yes, absolutely. Knowledge, yes, there's that, all that stuff. Very, very, very important. But there was one thing that outmarked all of these other things. Because you see, you can be really, really talented, but if you never do anything with your talents, you're not going to get anywhere. Then you have somebody here who's not as talented, but really works hard. Really works hard. Who do you think is going to win? I guarantee you, hard work beats talent every single time. Now, if you happen to be talented and you work hard, whew, that's a great combination. But unfortunately, it's just not how it works, because the most talented guys tend to be the laziest, because hey, they just got it and they're like, I got this. They become a little overconfident. It happens. So you always have this person who's not as talented working really, really hard, and someone really talented. You're wondering, why is he not, why is he slacking off? And he's really not going the journey that he possibly can. So remember that about talent and hard work. Talent is nothing without hard work. Okay. So coming back to this story, they came to this thing and they realized this factor here, this element, is a greater determinant of success than all these other factors. And that is something that they called delayed gratification. And what that is they do this thing, it's called a marshmallow test, where they give kids two options. That you can have a marshmallow now, or if you wait a few hours, you can have 3 marshmallows. And it's a very simple test. And usually kids say, nah, I just want the marshmallow now. Those who were okay with waiting to get 3, so they don't have any now, but they'll have to wait a few hours and then they get 3. The ability to make that decision turned out to be the greatest indicator of success among that study group. And what that went to show was that if you have the ability to sacrifice what you want today for what you really want in the future, you're going to win every time. What happens though is you want that today, right? It doesn't work that way. And so I've seen so many young and promising entrepreneurs who've started off very strong. They came up, and just as they came up a little bit, now they're spending all their money on cars and clothes and watches and shoes. I mean, they want to live that luxury life and show that they have it all. and they lose it all because that's not how that works. It's not how that works. You got to learn to live within the means that you create for yourself. You can't exceed those. It's just simple math, right? So the ability to say, I will sacrifice today for what I want tomorrow, knowing that you'll get twice, 5 times, 10 times as much. That ability is one of the greatest determinants of success. Learn to foster that ability, to look at situations, go, yep, this is great. I know I can do this. And maybe you can even afford this today. Maybe you can do this today, but I can play this game today instead of studying. I can do, this instead of focusing on what I need to do here. If you have the ability to set that aside, knowing that you're going to get a better return tomorrow, that is absolutely crucial as an entrepreneur. With that, I also want to come to something that is, as someone who works with people in many different countries. So I work with a lot of people here in Japan. I work with people in Sri Lanka, people in Kenya, and people in Uganda, and people in different parts of the world. And it's very interesting because everyone has different cultures and different beliefs, different ways of thinking. And you can literally see how the way they think affects their communication, the words they use, and how the words they use and the way they think affects their actions. Okay. And it's really interesting because there are 2 senses of control. For example, there's something known as an internal locus of control and an external locus of control. An external locus of control says, things happen to me, right? Things happen to me. You believe that there are outside forces that have massive impact on your life. Then you have an internal locus of control where you say, no, I make things happen. I make just about everything happen, right? And you take accountability on a much larger scale than those who have an external locus of control. Let me give you an example. Just in the way we communicate, just in the way we speak. Say I'm working with someone in my team in Sri Lanka. There are times where they'll say things that I will ask, why was this not done? Why didn't you do this? And the answer I get is literally, and if you don't mind, I think most, if not all of you speak Sinhalese here. And I say, what does that mean? Right? Now, I have the same issue with somebody, say, here. And if I were speaking in English and I say, why wasn't this done? They say, sorry, sir, I didn't think of it. But that's a big difference. Mateke hitunne and I didn't think of it are 2 different things. Mateke hitunne is not the same as I didn't think of it. I didn't think of it is mameke hituine. So that's something you should have done that you didn't do. So now when you say, I didn't think of it, sorry, sir, mameke hituine. What are you doing? You're taking control. You're taking accountability. You're saying, I should have thought of it and I didn't. I'm sorry. Won't happen again. That is an internal locus of control. When you say things like, you're going to say, it's like it was supposed to come to you from somewhere and it just didn't. It had some traffic issues or something. Like, whose fault is it now? So nobody's at fault. He's not at fault because hitunne, right? It didn't deliver properly, right? There was a connection error, right? And no one's at fault. How do you fix things? So I always notice these kinds of cultural things and the way we think about these things, having that internal locus of control versus that external locus of control. I always see that the best management The best management is always possible amongst those who have an internal locus of control, because you know what the problem is. You know who had the problem, where it happened, why it happened, and now you can fix it so it doesn't happen again. When you have these kind of answers and these kind of beliefs that there's something else controlling, you can't fix things, because you can only control what you can measure. And you can't measure anything if you are not the one in control. So that is very, very important, having accountability and having a sense of internal locus of control. You know, here in Japan, if I park my car on the side of a street and another car comes in and hits it, yeah, when it comes time to the police report, who do you think is wrong? You'd think the guy who hit my car is 100% wrong. I was parked on the side of the street legally, right? Even if it's a legal spot. If I was parked on the side of the street and he came and hit me, it's his fault. But here, that's not what happens. You know, he might get 70% or 80% of the blame. I get 10 to 20% of the blame too, because I was there. You're like, yeah, but I was just parked here. Yeah, but that's why he hit you, because you were parked there. Yeah, but I'm allowed to be parked here. You are allowed to be parked here, but you didn't have to be. You chose to park there. You got hit. So it's always a very interesting way of looking at it, because even if someone hits me, I'm responsible for having been there in the first place. Imagine that level of accountability. Because when you take that much control over your life, not just the things you do, but even the things that happen to you are somehow, to some degree, you're responsible for. Whew. That gives you immense control over your life and how you make decisions. So as an entrepreneur, having an internal locus of control, believing that you are in control, living intentionally, is absolutely vital and will put you miles ahead of the competition if you do that right. Okay. All right. Here's something else I want to just touch on, which is really important. Very few people talk about this, so I really want to talk about this for a second. I don't know how many of you consider yourselves perfectionists. I would have loved if we were all here and you could have raised hands, because I think there's going to be a few who considers themselves perfectionists. Doesn't work in business. Don't try to be perfect. There's no such thing. When you say I'm a perfectionist, I have to have it perfect. What does that mean? What's perfect? You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. None of this is perfect. Name me one thing that's perfect. There's nothing. Because look, let's go back 50,000 years. What were humans like back then? We weren't as evolved as we are now. Go back another 50,000. We were less evolved then. Go back another 50,000. We were less evolved. We've been evolving for hundreds of thousands of years. And at no point in our history were we perfect. We're still evolving. What makes you think we're perfect now? 200,000 years from now, there's going to be science books with pictures of a dude like this with hair and glasses and a beard going, is that what we used to look like? I mean, I'm telling you, it's going to happen because we're not perfect now. There is no such thing as perfect. We're evolving. We are the best that we can be given the circumstances. That's it. Okay. So when you're making decisions, do not take time on making perfect decisions, on getting everything right. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You're just going to waste time. You're going to waste your energy. There is no perfect. There is the best that you can do under the circumstances. That's it. Which is why I don't regret things. I mean, if you ask me something in my life, do you regret this or that? You know, I've made mistakes, but there are very few things that I actually regret Because if I could go back in time and I only had the same information that I had that time, the same knowledge I had that time, the same circumstances I had that time, I would make the same decisions. Would I not? So having come now to this age and this maturity and this knowledge and looking back at the world going, man, I shouldn't have done that. You didn't know that. If you did, you would have done something different. But you didn't. You did the best you could with what you had. That's it. Move on. Move on. Don't get stuck on stuff like that. Okay? Regrets is poison. Don't do things that you're going to regret, first of all, because that's different. That's when you know you should be doing something different, but you don't do it. Okay? That's a different story. But if you've made the best decisions that you could with the information you had and given the circumstances that you had, there's nothing you can do about it. Let it go. Okay? Because if you're trying to be 100% right, you might miss the whole thing. I know a lot of people who've been waiting for the perfect opportunity who never even got started because they're still waiting. I mean, that's like trying to go from Colombo to Unawatana, but you're waiting for all the traffic lights to turn green first. Yeah, you're not going to make it. Okay. You got to get started. You go, some of them you're going to make it. Sometimes you're going to miss it. You adjust as you go along. That's the best you can do. So there's a saying by one of my favorite authors. He said, he was brilliant HR guy. And he said, he makes decisions based on 80% capacity, right? He doesn't wait to be 100% right. And he said the reason was because I would rather be 80% right than 100% wrong. Because if you're waiting to be perfect, you're probably going to miss your opportunity anyway. And you're going to be 100% wrong in the fact that you've missed the whole thing. So don't wait for things to be perfect. Don't try to be perfect. If you're 80% good, you're good. Keep going. You'll have other opportunities. You have plenty of other things to do, plenty of other decisions to make. You get stuck on this one thing the whole time, you're not going to get anywhere, because life is not about perfection. It's about progress. Remember that, okay? It's not about perfection. It's about progress. And as long as you're making progress, you're winning. And progress is literally doing better today than you did yesterday. If I offered you $1 million right now, or I gave you $1, but I double it tomorrow. So tomorrow you get $2. And then I double it again the next day, you get 4. And I double it again the next day and you get 8. And I do that for 30 days, right? I think you're all very intelligent, young people. I think you can figure this out. The doubling is going to be so much more. In fact, it's going to be about $1 billion in 30 days. By day 29, I think it's going to be like 539 million or something. And then you're going to double it to over $1 billion the very next day. So if you are doing better than yesterday, if that's your whole goal, here's where I'm today, this is what I did today, I'm going to double that tomorrow. I'm going to do twice as much tomorrow. I'm going to do twice as better tomorrow. And you're just focused on progress. It's better than hitting that jackpot of 1 million in one shot, right? Focus on progress. And that is something you really need to understand as an entrepreneur. Don't get stuck on the little things, okay? All right. I don't think I need to tell you about making decisions and taking action. There is no substitute for that if you cannot make decisions. Quick decisions. Don't procrastinate. Quick decisions and take action. What's going to happen is some of those are going to be wrong. And that's okay. Which brings me to the final point I'm going to talk about on this topic. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, there's going to be something that you have to be willing to do that usually people are very unwilling to do, but you have to learn to be willing to do that. And that is that you have to be willing to fail over and over and over and over and over again, and never giving up. I'm not here because everything I did was a success. I'm here because most of the things I did were successful. But a lot of them didn't work. A lot of them flopped. A lot of them failed, right? But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because if you take the whole range of things, right? If you've made 10 successes, that's okay, as long as you've only failed 9 or 8 or 7. Okay, so it's not about succeeding on everything you do. It's about succeeding more times than you fail. So be willing to fail. Be willing to take risks, calculated risks. Calculated risks, but we be willing to take risks, because if you can't take risks and you don't have the heart to fail, you're never going to succeed, because there is no such thing as failure. There's absolutely, I don't even know. I think, as you know, when I was your age, I think most of you guys are in your early 20s, if I'm not mistaken. Man, failure was like, whew, I couldn't take it. Just the thought of failure. No, I can't fail. How can I fail? I have to win. I have to succeed. I got to this. I got to that. Until I realized that I have been given this completely wrong impression of success and failure, these two opposite things that are not opposite at all. Failure is just, it's literally just one of the steps towards success. That's it. It's just part of the process. It's not the opposite of success at all. And the earlier you learn that, the better. Okay. Just one other thing I'm going to touch on. If you're going into entrepreneurship, another really, really important thing you have to do, and you can start doing that right now, it's never too early to start, is building a strong network. Okay. Already, as in your school and around, and all the other schools around, and the people that you know, the webinars that you guys are doing now, like these things are all building up your network. Okay. So a few of you have connected with me. I don't personally, I haven't connected with many others of you, but try to get in touch with me. At least get my email address, get this. Maybe you'll need to contact me at some point, right? And you could say, hey, I was at that seminar, at that webinar on this day, sir, you know, I spoke to you, or I asked you this question that time, remember? And if I remember you, if you ask me an interesting question at the end of this in the Q&A, and I remember you, guess what? You could talk to me 5 years from now. You might need something that I could do for you. And there I am, right? So build that network. Every opportunity you get, every chance you get, don't let it go, because you might never meet that guy again. Build that network, get those contacts. Who you know is in this world, in reality, okay? Who you know goes further than what you can do sometimes. Okay, so build that network. All right. So having said all of that, we touched on what entrepreneurship is, how that's different from being a businessman, why you should go into entrepreneurship, you know, having the freedom to do different things and be your own boss, and your financial freedom and whatnot. And we just touched on who should go into entrepreneurship, what kind of traits and characteristics you should have if you're going into entrepreneurship. I want to take just a little time to touch on when. There's a lot of fear, shall I say, and doubt and concern, especially because of what's going through in Sri Lanka right now, or the economic crisis. Is this the right time to go into entrepreneurship? Is this the right time to start a business? Well, let me tell you something. Business is all about opportunities. It's all about opportunities. And you're never going to have as many opportunities as when there are problems. Okay. The more problems there are in the world, the more opportunities you have to fix them. That's what business is. It's fixing problems in exchange for profit. That's literally what it is. So if there are problems, give the solutions. There is no wrong time to go into entrepreneurship. Okay. Now, in countries like Japan, for example, these are markets that are really saturated. Everybody who can do anything has already done it. I mean, there's still stuff to do, but everybody's already done most of the stuff that, you and I can even think of. Then you have developing countries where, man, there's still so much left to do because there's still so many problems. There's still so much lack of things. So if today you're facing a situation in Sri Lanka where there's a lack, believe me, that means there's opportunity. Generals are not made in times of peace. Generals are made in times of war. Entrepreneurs, problem solvers, the best of them are made in times of economic crisis, okay? And then coming out of that, because, things like recessions, people, a lot of business people are scared of recessions. Hey, but recession is a great time to buy real estate because it's dirt cheap. It's the best time to hire because the most talented guys are now without jobs, right? And this is all in a recession when the economy is going down. So there are opportunities. There is no wrong time as long as you can identify those opportunities, okay? Touching on where you should be an entrepreneur. Today, you live in the age of the internet. I was 14 years old, maybe 13 or 14. First time we went online to yahoo.com, and that was the search engine of the time, and we had to have this modem plugged in and this dial-up modem, and it took forever just to get online. It was a different time. And now my little kids, my youngest one can't do his schoolwork without an iPad. So you guys are living at a very different age. You have everything at your fingertips. The whole world you have access to, okay? So where is irrelevant today? Now, if you have a particular product and you need to be there to develop those products, or say you're doing tea and you're doing Ceylon tea, well, then you need to be in Sri Lanka to do Ceylon tea. Those are questions of your products. But today you're in a place where you can basically function from anywhere. And all you got to do is think about the other parts of this. For example, language issues or ease of access or cost of capital. For example, right now in Sri Lanka, if you were to borrow money for capital to start a business, you borrow money from the bank, you're going to pay about what, 30% interest? 30% interest. Do you know how much I pay in Japan? Less than 2% annually. It's like free money. I could borrow money in Japan, leave it in the bank in Sri Lanka, do nothing and make a profit. Right? Ease of access, cost of capital. So that's one of the great benefits of being based here. Okay. So those are things you'll have to consider based on your business and all these things. There's tax benefits, for example. Certain countries give you much better tax benefits. The reason a lot of corporations move their headquarters to countries like Hong Kong, because they're very low taxes. Then there's tax havens and all these other things. But those are also the things to consider when you're thinking about where to move your business. But that is at a later stage. I think at this point in your lives, you can start anything from just about anywhere because you have that access. So getting started, I think, is the most important part of it. Okay, so we went through what, why, who, when, and where. Let me just touch on how for a couple of minutes, because I don't want to take up too much time before we go into Q&A. How do you become an entrepreneur? Look, being an entrepreneur, like I said earlier, is not just something you do, it's who you are, okay? If you're a singer, you're a singer. Now, you might consider the first time you sang on stage was the day you became a singer, or the first single or album you put out was the day you became a singer, or the first award you got was the day you became. No, you were a singer since you were 3 and singing in the shower, all right? A singer is a singer all their entire life. When they started their professional career is a different story. But if you're a singer, that's who you are. You didn't just turn 23 and become a singer. No, you were always a singer. If you're an actor, it's the same thing. If you're an artist, you do sketching, drawing, you were always an artist, right? You were scribbling since you were a kid. If you're an entrepreneur, you are always an entrepreneur. That has been something that has always been with you. So there's no date on that. You can start whenever you want. The real thing is asking yourself this question. So how do you become an entrepreneur? Very simple thing. Look around, identify a problem, and ask yourself, how can I fix that problem? And then create a mechanism to fix it. That's it. That's it. Figure out a problem that you can solve, right? Something that exists is a problem. How can I do this better? Maybe somebody else is already doing something about it. That's okay. Let me do it better. Let me do it faster. Let me do it cheaper. If you can figure that out, if you can figure the process of doing that, hey, you're in business, okay? So again, these are, I'm touching on very basic things here. We could go days and days and days talking about this. So I just wanted to give you guys a brief overview of entrepreneurship and the 5 W's and the hows on that. Having said that, I want to say one last thing before we go into Q&A. There are 4 ways that you make money, okay? There's only 4 ways that you can make money. One of them, and you always have to trade something. One of them is to trade your time. Keep this in mind. This is going to help you guys a lot someday. One of these is to trade your time. It's called a job. That's when you go 9 to 5 and you're trading your time for a salary. Problem with that is time is limited. So you can only trade so much. And you really don't have a lot of negotiation power on what you should get for that time. Okay? That's way number 1. Number 2, you trade information for money. So imagine this webinar, for example. I make this video, right? We make this video and we charge people to watch this video, for example, right? It's online somewhere and people can pay income. So if this is 1 hour long, you get paid however many people watch it, you get paid that many times. So now you're not trading money. Sorry, now you're not trading time. You're trading this thing that you've created, right? This information, which is now a product. And you're not limited by that time. The other is products and services. But again, products and services, I think that's probably the most common way of making money. And the 4th is trading money for money, making your money go to work. That's investments, right? But to make a substantial living out of investments, you kind of have to have a lot of money first. So you have to do some of these other things and build up your wealth before you can invest that and then live off the dividends of that. So that's something later on. But these are the 4 ways of doing that. And if you can figure out how to do products and services or information rather than trade your time itself, there's way more potential in those 2 areas. All right. Now, I've done quite well for myself so far. I still feel I'm very early in my journey, that it's not, you know, hey, I'm 38. I got a good 15 years at least in me. I think I could probably do quite a bit in that time. Now, here's what you guys have that I am losing every single day. You have time. You have a lot of time. And there is no currency more valuable than time. Because I'll tell you something. If I could have this knowledge and go back to where you guys are, I'd trade this in and start over, because I'll know how to create 10 times more by now. So what you guys have is now you got the time, and if you can take the knowledge from those like me who are already here, you can use that to do twice as much, 5 times as much as I've done. Use that time. Use it well, because I mean, when I was your age, I didn't really care about this. I had grown-ups telling me all the time, you have time, you can try everything knowing. And yes, great. But because I had so much time, I didn't really care for it. And as time goes on and you start losing that a little bit, and you realize, whoa, hi, am I coming up to 40? Dude, another 40, I'm 80? Whoa. Uh-oh. Okay. And then you start realizing, man, that is really, really valuable. So you have time. Try things, enjoy your life, do what you got to do. And while you're learning from your own experiences, try as much as you can to learn from others, because you will accelerate so much more doing that rather than just learning from yours. And you have access to all of that. So take that time. I'll leave you with this. This is something that I came across a while back, and I thought it was very wise. And this is from a gentleman who's very successful in his, I think he was in his 60s when he said this. And he said that his mother said, when you're in your 20s, try everything. Try everything. Because you have time and you can afford to fail. You don't have a family to support. You don't have kids. You don't have any of these things to deal with. You know, worst case, you still have your parents and hope for the good health who you can lean back on a little bit if you need to. So try everything. Try all the things that you're interested in. Do that in your 20s. In your 30s, figure out from all of those things one thing that you're really, really good at. And then try to be a master of that. And then in your 40s, learn how to really make money from that one thing. And in your 50s, try to cut back a little bit and spend more time with family. Okay. You guys are in your early 20s. I am in my late 30s. And we're all on the same path, same journey. So I hope that that this has been informative, and that you have something to gain from this. Thank you so much for your time. I wish we could go on, but maybe on another time. But thank you again for listening to me, and I'll be more than happy to take questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sajeev. So we've got several questions here. So Vimukti Dilshan is asking, like, should we invest our money or start a business?
I'm sorry, say that again. Should we?
Should we invest our money or start business?
If you're going to invest for the sake of investing, I mean, you could, but if you're trying to live off that investment, you're probably not going to have enough. Because if you make an investment and you make 10% or 20%, 30%, it really depends on what your investment is. If you've only invested $1,000, and even if you make $50%, that's only $500. That's not enough to live off of, right? But if you've invested $300 million and you make 10% of it, 30 million, I think you can live off of. So if you're going to do investments, you kind of have to build up your capital a little bit before you start investing. Now, if you want to do this to build a portfolio, not to live off of, right? Say you have a job or you're doing a business, and then you're taking 10%, say, of the profits of your business, and you're putting it in different investments, right? Every month, just take out 10%, put it into different investments, just leave it there. That's okay. That's all right. And I would actually encourage that, because in the long run, that'll build up. But don't expect to live off of that unless you have a lot to invest. If you don't have a whole bunch to invest that is good enough for you to live off of, I think you're better off starting your own business. Does that help? Is that all right?
Yes. Yeah. So the next question is, how to know if we are suitable to become businessmen?
Okay. I think that goes kind of back to the who should be an entrepreneur question. So again, there's so many things, but you really need to there's so many things. I mean, I could, again, and I think we touched on some of those, but there's so much. If you really enjoy fixing problems, right? Working with people, if you enjoy figuring out, something that needs to, a problem that needs to be solved, and how you can solve those, how you can do it better. If you're competitive, if you're persistent, those kind of qualities, I think, will give you a signal, an indication of whether you're someone who's prepared to do business. But I think the best way to do that is to actually start, because there are people who have a wrong impression of what business is. And some might think that they are suitable for business and then find out that they're not. And some might think that they're not suitable for business and try and go, wow, I love this, right? So, like I said, you're young, try it. Start a business, why not? Throw in a little bit and start a business. And if you want to, just to try, I'm not saying to do this to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or the next, so-and-so, just to try. And if you want to mitigate the risk, 5 of you get together, put in some capital so that you only take 20% of the risk if everything goes down, right? Start a business and see how it goes. You might enjoy it or you might not. And then you need to evaluate, if you didn't enjoy it, why you didn't. Maybe the people you worked with weren't right, or maybe the product wasn't right, or maybe the industry wasn't right. I don't know. But those are things you're going to figure out as you go along. And I think the best way that you're going to figure out who you are, what you like, what's best for you, is to try a lot of things. And you're in your 20s, so go for it.
Right, and also like asking your 4 degrees that took up you to this point.
I'm sorry?
Your 4 degrees that they're asking. So what are the 4 degrees that you did to educate up to this point?
Okay. So first of all, I initially wanted to be a lawyer. I think I would have been a pretty good lawyer, but I didn't want to be just limited to that. So I went into business. I started doing a bachelor's in business administration. And at one point in my life, this was in my 20s, I was very curious about figuring out spirituality and if there's a God out there, what's the truth, what exists, all that stuff, right? So I wanted to study about that more. I didn't know enough about it. And then I decided to take some time and study it. So I did a bachelor's in divinity. I did a master's in theology. And then I came back and did my executive MBA. And the executive MBA was, so it's for execs who have at least 10 years of work experience as executives. So that's one of the criteria to join. It was filled with some of the top execs here in Japan. It's a very, very competitive program, really tough, but I really enjoyed it because it gave us like stuff really intense, but stuff that you could use like tomorrow. You could go in a class today, you come back and you're like, okay, I got to apply all of this tomorrow. So that was really exciting doing that. And so, yeah, those are the 4 degrees that I did. I'm actually hoping to start another one. I was hoping to start this year. It's a little difficult for me because I have so many projects going on. So I'm hoping to start another one next year. It's a 3-year program. I need to be on campus for 3 months and the rest is online. So thinking of starting another one next year. Yeah, I remember. So basically I'll be studying into my 40s. I remember someone told my parents when I was a kid, looked at me and said, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if you studied until his 40s. My mom got scared, thought I wouldn't graduate school until I was 40. I don't think that's what they meant. So yeah, you know, I know certain professors of mine who are executives who own their businesses. They take 1 semester to teach at university. That's one of the rules of their company, just so that all of his executive team, in order to teach, you have to study the material. So they get to stay on top of like new technologies and new things like that. So this is a very fast changing world. And I don't think we have the option of stopping education at any point. So 4 done, thinking of another, and we'll see after that.
All right, so then asking, is it better investing in stock market in Sri Lanka if we have the knowledge of Sri Lankan economy?
Is it better to invest in the stock market in Sri Lanka if you have the knowledge of stock market in Sri Lanka? Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if you have the knowledge for it, go for it. I think when it comes to the stock market, a lot of things are very unpredictable, no matter where that is. But Sri Lanka, like, again, as I said, is one of those developing countries which have a lot of potential, a lot of opportunities because it's developing. So those kind of countries tend to grow at a rapid pace, unfortunately, due to serious mismanagements and many other issues that we don't need to go into. That's not been happening. So the fear I have with investing in the stock market in Sri Lanka, if you do so heavily, is whether with inflation and things like that, whether you actually come off profiting in the end. I do believe that we've gone through the worst. I really hope that that's not something we're going to have to face again. And if we stay on the right track, we should be seeing some good economic growth in the future. Some of you may know I'm the international director of the Sri Lanka Japan Business Council. I'm also the Japan country representative appointed by the president of Sri Lanka for the Ministry of Investment Promotion. So I represent Sri Lanka in Japan and on a global scale. And we're trying, I was just appointed March 1st. So we're doing a lot of things now. I'm actually working with the team here, with the business council here, to get the business councils, the Sri Lankan business councils around the world under one umbrella and create a global federation of Sri Lankan business councils to help support trade amongst them, as well as bring in foreign currency into the country and things like that. So, you know, we're doing everything we can to support as well. Hopefully, the leaders of the country do the same. And if that goes well, I think Sri Lanka would be a remarkable place to invest in, even in the stock market.
Yeah. So then the next question is like, at what point did you look at your business and consider it a success?
Well, I think you know, to each his own. You can decide what success is to you at any point. But my business has been a success since day one because um, you go through different stages, right? So my youngest daughter now is 10 months old, and she's crawling and standing up on her own. She's not running any marathons. She's not swimming. She's not doing backflips, but she's standing up on her own. And as a 10-month-old, I think that's pretty successful, right? So if she starts walking in another 2 months, I will think she's very successful. Because as you go through different stages, there's certain things that you can do. You can't run at 10 months, right? So you have to understand that there are different stages in your business. And if you can crawl at 10 months, that's a good start. So from the beginning, I believe that my business did what it needed to do at the stages that it needed to do that. And as long as you do that, I think you're successful.
Right. So now Tarush is asking, I'm looking for sat for to set A levels in 2023. My father already have a minor scale business. I want to expand it, but I don't have the capital for that. I'm planning to come to Japan for studies. Is it okay to make my capital?
I'm sorry, the last part of it, is it okay to make my capital?
Yeah, so he's asking, so is to have a stable capital himself to start his father's business. He's planning to come to Japan. So he's
Yeah.
asking whether it's fine to make it that way.
I'm struggling to understand a little bit. So his father has a business, and he's coming to Japan to study, I
Yeah,
believe.
so he doesn't have yes, so he doesn't have an enough capital for that. So he's planning to come to Japan for studies, so that he can uh, do the rest of it, like he can manage everything after his studies.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely fine. Um, if if he doesn't have enough capital to come to Japan or to run the business.
So for studies, I think then he'll yeah, first he will study in Japan itself, and then he will just continue with his business.
Well, I think that's a wonderful plan, and you know, going from generation to generation is a very important thing. I am a second generation. I watched my father through all his um, most grave struggles. I got to be a part of that, and I'm the I'm second generation, and I'm hoping that my sons will and daughters will carry on from here as well. If you're planning to come to Japan to study here, that's a good thing. I'm sorry, but I'm still a little unclear about how that's going to support your father's business. I don't know if you're planning on going back after that. I don't know if you're planning on starting something here. If you'd like, maybe you can get my number from one of the young gentlemen here, and then maybe we could discuss about that a little more later, because I want to be clear about what I'm answering. So I'd be happy to talk
So
to you
shall we
later.
give them your email address so that they can contact you? Is it fine?
Abs- Absolutely.
All right. So I will give you Mr. Sajeev's email address so that you can contact him via that. And I think so. We have like, I don't know. We have like several questions and maybe like more than 100 questions, which means so the best thing is asking them to contact you personally and get the answers. So for now, let's wind up the session for today. Over to Hiranya.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of English Literary Union of Ananda College, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to all of you for gracing us with your presence today. Your enthusiasm and active participation have truly made this event a remarkable success. I would also like to extend a special note of thanks to our esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Sajeev Rajaputhra. Your insightful words, profound knowledge, and captivating delivery have left an indelible impact on all of us. Your expertise and willingness to share your wisdom have inspired us to strive for greatness and embrace new horizons. To the audience, your unwavering support and engagement have made this gathering truly memorable. Your questions, comments, and interactions have enriched the experience for everyone involved. Once again, thank you all for your unwavering support, and may we carry the lessons, inspiration gained here today in our hearts as we embark on new journeys and pursue excellence in all our endeavors. Thank you.
So thank you very much, guys, for joining today, and thank you very much, Mr. Sajeev, for taking your time to be here with us today. And really blessed to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. And I wish you all the best in continuing your series. And I really look forward to hearing from you guys and eagerly watching and supporting your careers as you go forward. You are the future. Okay, remember that. All the best, guys.
Thank you, sir. This truly means
Thank
a
you
lot.
very much. See you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.